to Scott Davies. There is to be late drama.
So you've had 2 great years at Aldershot, and then you've gone back to Reading. You're still young. You're still in your early 20s by the time you're back at Reading, and you get your opportunity. You make your debut for Reading, and then you get a handful of games, and then it stops. And
yeah,
what happened?
God. So we went away to Sweden on a pre-season tour. I managed to get 4 goals in 2 games. Done really well. Came back, played against Chelsea, scored a free kick against Petr Cech. And I suppose I was living my dream at this point, playing in front of sort of 20,000 people I'd never done before. And I started the first game of the Championship against Notorious. I played the next 3. And for me, what happened was gambling completely took over. I was completely and utterly exhausted, I suppose, by the addiction at this point. I was rushing to get out of training. I was pulled back in by the manager. That was Brendan Rodgers. And he said, listen, if you look out that window now, you can see the other young pros. They're there in the afternoon. They're trying their hardest. They're trying to improve. He said, you're different. He said, you're out of that training ground, out the gates before I'm even off the pitch myself. And I had a date every single day, not with a nice little blonde or anything like that. I had a date with the bookmakers, just desperate to put some bets on some horses, sit at a roulette machine. It was all I thought about. And little did I know from that day, I was never going to play another match for Reading because I lied to the manager 24 hours later about why I needed to leave training. I got caught and my career went downhill from then. I always think that if I'd have told him the truth and said to him, listen, I've got an issue with gambling, would he have helped me out? I don't know. But I was just so ashamed. Gambling's a bit of a dirty word. People think that you're selfish. They think that you're from a broken home or a dysfunctional family. But it completely got hold of me. People said to me, why did you gamble? Why do you do it? I said I was young. I had the time to do it, the money to do it. I felt like I had the knowledge to beat the system because I was a professional sports person. So I thought I knew about the game if I was betting on football, and I was competitive. So to be those things and have those things like money and time, it enabled me to gamble. And when I did lose a bet, I thought to myself, that competitive streak, that competitive edge that I did have, I couldn't go home on that. I wanted to make sure that I won my next bet. And it just became a vicious circle. And in the end, it completely ruined my finances, my state of mind, my career, ruined my family's lives. It just devastates completely everything. So it was tough. But it's like you say, if someone had said to me at 6 years old that you're going to play 4 games in the second league in England, I would have ripped their hand off. So I've got to be grateful for that. But at the same time, I'm absolutely gutted at the same time that it wasn't 200 games. So it's like you say, there's pros and cons about both situations and what could have been. But I've got to be grateful for what happened.
When did it come to a head and it come to that, probably the lowest point for yourself? You just, enough was enough. And if something hadn't have happened, then it would have just got worse and it could have been an even worse scenario. When was that moment?
Yeah, so for me, it kind of took a turn for the worst. I thought I was going to sign on loan to Leeds United from Reading at one point. And I didn't know that they were looking at me and another player, a player called Adam Clayton that's now I think he's gone to Birmingham now, but he was at Middlesbrough last season. And they signed him on loan from Manchester City rather than me. And I just had quite a large sum of money put into my bank account from Reading for some bonuses that I got from playing that in the first few months of the season. And I didn't know how to deal with the disappointment, rejection, upset, embarrassment. I had all those feelings. So I got in my car, I went to the bookmakers and I gambled £10,000 away in just over an hour. And for me, I knew it was an issue then. I knew that I had a serious issue. So I went to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting that night and I sat in a room full of like-minded people. One told me that he was stealing from work. One told me he'd done a street robbery. And I sat there and I thought, I'm nowhere near as bad as you lot. So I went home that night. I thought I had all the answers to what I needed. Bearing in mind at this stage, I was still only 22, 23. It went on for another 4 years after that. So signed for Crawley, got a large signing on fee of £30,000. My parents were looking after my finances, and I'd actually saved £31,000 to put a deposit down for a house because my mum had been looking after my accounts. I managed to get into my account and gambled it away in just over 10 days. So that was another sort of eye-opener, as if to say, you've got an issue, you need to go and address it. But I was still in denial yet again. I ended up sleeping in my car after training, pretty much being homeless because I couldn't afford to get home. I started to bet on my own matches. I crashed my car whilst watching horse racing, just coming off the M25. There were so many things that happened that was just exhausting. I was living the most tired life because my whole life was one big lie. I was having to lie to absolutely everyone about what I'd been up to. And I was completely ashamed, but I didn't know how to stop. I did not know how to stop. And for me, it was really difficult because I'd never known anyone that was a teammate of mine, an ex-teammate of mine that had got the help to stop them gambling. So I didn't really know where to turn to until one day my mum walked into the bookmakers when I was there. She saw me in there. She started crying her eyes out and she said, listen, enough's enough. You're going to end up dead or you're going to break up mine and your dad's marriage. And at this point, my mum and dad had lent me about £50,000-60,000 to pay my debts and pay bills and stuff. So I went home that night and did the most stupid thing I've ever done in my life. And I held a knife to my chest. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but I did it because I felt such anger to what had happened in the previous few years. Had a lot of regrets, a lot of heartache. And for me, it really woke me up to what my life was and what it'd become. And I got scared for the first time in my life. I went and told my mum exactly what had happened. And then 2.5 weeks later, I was in rehab. So, yeah, it completely got the better of me. But it's probably the best thing I've ever done. Go to rehab is probably the biggest thing I've ever achieved. I was there for 26 days. I spoke about all my problems, all the issues that I'd faced, and just got them off my chest because I had so many things that I was disappointed that I'd done that I needed to get rid of those sort of resentments as well. It wasn't nice, but luckily I came out of there on August the 1st, 2015. And since that day, my life's completely turned for the best.
It's absolutely fascinating what you're talking about there, Scott. And I want later on just to for you to cover exactly what you do now to, in a way, it's sort of giving back, isn't it, in terms of the experience that you've gone through to stop footballers of a similar ilk to yourself at a similar age who are just starting out on their career and just showing them the pitfalls and education. And I'd like to cover that later on. But whilst all this is happening in your life, you're still playing football because you then, you leave Reading. So did you know then that your opportunity to play at that level had gone? Or, I know you went to Wycombe Wanderers online, you teamed up again with Gary Waddock and Martin Cool. And did you think that you had the opportunity, maybe you could rebuild and possibly get back up to where you've just left?
Yeah, I suppose I did at that point. I thought to myself, listen, all I need to do is go to Wycombe Wanderers and emulate what I did at Aldershot. And for the first part of I went on loan there twice. The first part of my loan in League One, I probably did it. I think I got 5 goals in 16 games, which wasn't too bad. And there was a little bit of a talk about maybe going higher and leaving Reading at the end of the season. It didn't happen. And it's like you say, I knew that I was in good company being back with Gary and Martin because they enabled me to play the way I wanted. And then when I signed for Crawley, I thought I'd signed for a club that were on the up. Obviously, a large amount of finance and investment that they had from the Far East under Steve Evans, which was very, very different. But Crawley didn't work out the way I wanted it to. We got promoted in the first season to League One. The club then found themselves in some sort of financial difficulty at the end of the first season, and said they needed me off the wage bill. I was on just under £2,000 a week. So they said, listen, you're not going to play for the club ever again. So I sort of sat in the stands for the next 6 months, just sort of waiting for some news, waiting to see where I was going to go next. Ended up going to Oxford United, and I knew then that my sort of dream was over. I wasn't going to propel myself back into the higher echelons of the Football League as such. And it's difficult to take because even though Aldershot at the time was the lowest level of sort of full-time football I played, I absolutely loved being there. When I was training in the Premier League with Reading or in the Championship with Reading, I loved being there because you get treated like royalty and get treated really well. But what I found really tough was playing in an average League Two side. I didn't find it enjoyable because you're not having the success and everyone's not enjoying it as much as what you would have been if you were in the top end of the league. The training grounds weren't great, so you're training on pitches that weren't enjoyable, and it became more of a chore because we didn't have the togetherness that we had at Aldershot, I guess. So for me, after a while, I was getting up in the morning and I was thinking to myself, do I really want to be doing this? And that's how it became. I look back now and I think that I was probably asking myself that question because of what was going on outside of football rather than football itself. Because if someone said to me, listen, you'll still be at Oxford United now, you look at them, they're a massive club. They've got a brand new training ground. They're doing well in League One, or they were last season. I'd be stupid to turn that down. So I think it was just my mind playing tricks on me because of what was going on in my life and how football had changed for me, I guess, because I had so much success in my early days. And then sort of next 3 or 4 years after that was just each season seemed to be the same as the last. And I didn't really enjoy it anywhere near as much.
I'm going to talk about your time at Crawley Town because I can remember there's a video of when Steve Evans went to, I think he when he left as manager, I think went to Rotherham and all that. All the players are having a celebration in the lounge or something. It was just something that I just recalled and just found it quite humorous at the time. Yeah,
so we played Barnet away and we knew the day before, I think it was, that Steve had gone to Rotherham. And the assistant manager, not Paul Rayner, the other one, Craig Brewster, was a Scottish guy. He had 2 assistants. He came in and he said, listen, lads, this was in pre-match in the hotel before the Barnet match. He said, listen, lads, the manager's left. He's gone to Rotherham. We need to stick together. We need to make sure that we finish this job that we're on. We were quite high up in the league at the time. And he said, does anyone want to say anything? And one of the lads called Scott Nielsen all of a sudden stood up. And I was thinking, like, what are you going to say? He's not like the captain, the leader. He's quite a bit of a joker, but he wasn't even playing at the time. So he stood up and he started singing, we're going to sing a song because the fat man's gone. And he started singing it. He said, I can't remember, it goes, come on, everybody, clap your hands. Oh, we're looking good. We're going to sing a song because the fat man's gone. We're going to do the twist. And it goes like this. So everyone starts getting up and doing the twist. So we're doing it. And unfortunately for me, we get to Barnet and I wasn't named in the starting 11. And I was really annoyed about it. So 1-0 down at half time. They brought me on. So we said that if we score that day, we have to do the twist, but only if it's a winning goal. So I played a corner in and someone's headed it in and it's gone to 1-1. And about 89 minutes, I've had a shot from about 25 yards and it's gone in. And I knew that I had to do the twist. So we ran over to our fans and we started doing the twist. And then all the fans was thinking, like, where's this come from? Unluckily, one of the lads in our team had videoed it and sent it to a friend of us doing the twist in the hotel. And it gone viral. So I think it's got like 100,000 views now on YouTube. And we were absolutely shocked that someone had sent it out. And we were like, listen, like the manager can't see this. Steve Evans cannot see it. So when I did leave Crawley a year later, my agent rang him and said, listen, Scott Davies is on a free transfer. He's leaving Crawley. Would you be interested in signing him? And he said, he's a great player. He said, but he's a beep, beep, beep. And he just swore so many expletives because he'd seen the video. He'd seen that I'd celebrated by doing the twist. So, yeah, it was just one of those things. I don't know where it came from, but, yeah, it was a good laugh looking back at it.
Was he a different kind of manager to play under?
Christ, yeah. Do you know what? It's one of those. If he wasn't picking on you, it was great fun to be around. But the problem is he picked on me quite a bit. So my first experience with him was playing for Aldershot against Crawley. And I was walking out of the changing rooms. So I walked out of changing rooms, gone to turn right to go up to the car park. and he's coming down in a big Range Rover, and he wound his window down and stopped me. And he said, "Oi, you." So I was just like, "Yeah." And he said, "You're a good player, you." He said, "But," he said, he started hammering Gary and Martin. So I was just like, "Oh, go on, off you go on your bike and whatnot." And he then got out of his car, believe it or not. He gets out of his car and he walks around to me because I called him a name. And he comes walking towards me, and I'm thinking, what is he going to do? Little did I know, my dad stood behind him. My dad's quite a big bloke. So my dad stood in front of me, and he's grabbed him by the throat. And I was like, Dad, leave it. It's fine. Like, don't worry about it. So Steve gets back in his car and drives off. And then 2 years later, he rings me and he says, "Scott, Steve Evans, Crawley Town." And he's like, "Listen, I want to sign you." And I'm thinking, hold on a minute. You had an argument with my dad in the car park 2 years ago. I said, "Now you want to sign me?" He said, "Listen, bring your dad down." He said, "We'll shake hands. We'll forget about it." But that was my first experience with Steve. And then my first week at Crawley, I walked out of the changing room when he was shouting at me because I couldn't handle it. I just thought, do you know what? I regret signing here already, and I've only been here for about 4 days. And that's where I didn't play for the next sort of couple of months. I was made to train with the youth team. But value for money, he is actually a really, really funny guy. And it's like you say, he does well. He probably like instills a fear factor into his players that if you're not going to go out there and work hard, if you're not going to die for the badge on the front of the shirt, then you're not going to play for him. And he taught me a different way to play. I played a lot of games at right midfield for Crawley because he said, "Listen, you can run, just run up and down, work hard for me." And I actually saw him last year for the first time in, must have been 7 or 8 years. Sat down in his office with him when I was doing a talk at Gillingham. And he was so pleasant. He was so polite. He was so nice, really welcoming. Well, and people probably don't see that. They don't see that side of him. So he is a bit of a gentle giant. But it's like you say, it was a hell of an experience, that's for sure.
And you've played under some managers who have really progressed their career. When you talked earlier on, you talked about Brendan Rodgers, who's had a fantastic management career. You had Chris Wilder at Oxford United, who's gone on with Sheffield United, Steve Coppell obviously at Reading as well. You've played some pretty significant managers. Yeah,
Chris Wilder's probably the most surprising one out of all of them. And I don't say that begrudgingly, or I don't say it as a dig, because the bloke is one of the nicest blokes you'll ever meet in your life. He made training fun. He made it enjoyable. But he had a club in Oxford United where it was underachieving at the time. So he actually took a backward step to go to Northampton. I don't know whether it was for financial reasons or anything like that. But he took a backward step. And we actually played them on the last game of the season, where if we'd have beaten them, they'd have gone down to the National League. Unfortunately for us, we lost 3-1, and then he ended up getting promoted the following year, promoted again, and then Sheffield United, he obviously got back-to-back promotions with them. So he was a guy where, similar to Gary Waddock, just made it fun, made it enjoyable. It wasn't too serious. I think some football managers can make it too serious now. I think you can drain the fun out of football, because that's when it does become a chore, becomes a hobby. But for me, it's been surprising to see how well he has done. But you see the way that his teams play now, and they've got their own identity, their own philosophy. Whereas at Oxford, we were pretty much 4-4-2, get a ball wide, get crosses in the box. I watch Sheffield United now, especially last season. I think they were one of the best teams in Europe to watch. They really did play with a bit of swagger in a way that was different from anyone else. But the reason why I think he's done well is purely his personality. He's such a lovely bloke, really nice guy, very down to earth. And like you say, he's a Sheffield man. He's a Sheffield guy. He bleeds red, white, and black. So I think sometimes when you've got, like I said earlier, the affinity with the club, it can go a very long way. Yeah, I did. I can't say I enjoyed it too much. That's just me being honest. It wasn't about Dean or anything like that, but I just felt it was really, really unprofessional. The chairman and the chief exec at either club, they were friends. So what I got told is that basically you tell Scott that we'll sign him. He'll sign the paperwork here to leave today. He'll come to you and you can just say, listen, the deal's off. and that's